All right, we've gone down, all the way down the line here and gotten all these boards set in and making sure that they're long enough everywhere to go through there, that they fit past, just slightly past, or right to the other end at least, on the outside of the planking, all the way down the line. And you should be able to make all that. You'll have actually some odd ones at the end down here. We'll get into that when we get putting them on. So, and then what I always do is I actually did it on that side. I numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and on down the line, so that when you start putting them on, you're putting them back exactly like you had looked at them now. Because actually a few of them I touched up the edges just to make sure they fit together pretty well. And that'll help me when I start going on with it. So now what I'm going to do, we're going to start with this first one back here. What I'll do is just get some of these sort of out of the way. And then what I'm going to do right here is we want this to overhang the stern by about a 1/2 inch, so I put a little mark on here. Let me check it, 1/2 inch right here. And then the same thing on the other side, 1/2 inch. And that's what I'm going to put this board to, right there. And there. You come this way, make sure that you're overhanging the side plank by a little bit, not much, or right at it at least. Let me get ready to come take it off. And then what I do, starting off with this first piece, we've got to get it all right in the same place, and everything else just stacks to it. We don't have to worry about that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill a couple of holes to get started. We want to be in past where the transom is a little bit. And when I drill this, I want to be sure I've got a little bit of angle like the side, and then I'm going this first one kind of into the side board, and then the next one I'll get it up into the chine. I'm going to go over here and do one here the same way. That's enough. All right, we've drilled those holes. I'm going to mark where the front of this board is, across there. And I'm also going to take a couple of these 1 5/8" screws in that hole that we had there, making sure that's on. And then leave that in, sticking through like we did when we were doing the valve. And then I'm going to move that back, and that way I can get them lined back up into that same hole. We're going to take some caulk in the back, and we're going to put a nice, heavy bead. That's a heavy bead. And all the way across the stern here. And down that side. And then we're going to go back with this. See if I can get it back in the same hole. Yeah, that's it right there. Just get it caught. Alright, now I am going to drill some more holes here. I'm going to do another one, remembering the angle, and you can, if you get up here and you can sight where the center of this chine board is, and you can look down there and see the angle that you need to have. Drill in too far, just get down into the next board. And then I'm gonna put a few of them along this transom. Now you gotta make sure you're back in there past where the back of the transom, and don't forget the transom's got a little bit of angle to it also. And you can tell by feeling where that is, but if you need to, you can measure. Stick with the 1 5/8. You probably want to get that set in just below the surface. Or right at it, either one. You don't want them sticking out. Then the next thing we want to do is just make sure this is pretty close to the center. Just measure from each side. 15 1/8. There, 15 3/16, so that'll work just fine. I think that'll be fine. And what we want to do is start a pattern now when we do these ones into the keels. And these 2 screws I'm going to put, they're going to hold this in place, and then we'll add them to the other one. But I'm going to use the shorter screws this time. Don't forget, because you're going through 2 3/4 inch boards, so you're going to just use the 1 1/4 screws in there. And I still want to drill through this one. Don't go down too far. And we don't caulk this one. This is just dry fit. And I'm going to do what I'm going to do for a pattern. I'm going to, from where I'm standing here, let's do forward on this left side and back on the right side. And each one will do that as we go down the line on this one. That way, when we come back with the outer keel that goes on top, as long as we get started the right way, we won't hit the screws that are underneath it. So we'll see when we get there. You'll see what we're doing. All right, I'm going to just drill these 2. Screws in here, that'll lock. Oh, I need one more thing, just make sure I'm not good and tight. Almost forgot. Just put one of those C-clamps on there, make sure that board's up good and tight. Really doesn't have to be real tight there, but so it doesn't have to go. That'll pull it up good. Remind me as we go along, we're going to do that on each one of them, make sure it's up good and tight. Then we're ready for the next one, but what I'm going to do before I start that process, I'm going to go ahead and just move some of these up a little bit so that I get my way. Stand up, and then we just keep moving along. So now this next one, same thing that we just did, just making sure that you're long enough on the ends. Just snug it back tight, look at it, make sure it's fitting decent. It doesn't have to be tight, you don't need to clamp it. As long as you don't have but maybe a 32nd of an inch, I mean even a 1/16 of an inch will swell, as long as you don't have a whole bunch of them like that. But you'll find that they do fit reasonably well. And just again, we're going to do the same thing, but this time I've got this board in this holding the shape, and all I got to do is hold it back to that. So I think what I'm going to do is just again mark that and that. Put a bead bead of this caulk on there. Just start there, a nice chunk of it there, and a nice chunk of it right there. Making sure that you get all the way up. And then, like I say, making sure that it fits on each end. And back. And then, again, we want to take it, drill down through here, and again, you can...
Okay.
All right, that's another one of those off, and we just started from the back. Every time we put one down, we just cut it off, and that way you can keep track of where you're going each time in there. And, you know, so that we'll just keep on now, and then I get down here, I'll show you what I'm gonna do to finish that up. All right, we're down to the last three pieces, and what I want to show you is that I end up, this piece is full size, but it only leaves me about a 2-inch piece on this end, and that can be problematic trying to nail that on or screw that on. So what I'm going to do is rip these two down, take an inch or so off of each one of these. I've cut them already just to play with it, but in essence I've gone back that way and then that way, and that just leaves me maybe a 1/2 inch overhanging with this. And then I took equal amounts, sawed that off, and then sawed that off, and those two go on, and then you end up having almost that whole board on there, and you can put a couple of screws, three or four screws in that one, and I'll still do 2 screws the same way on these two. So that it just makes a better job when you get through it, less likely to split this. Definitely drill them again and so on. So that's the way that's done, and then we just go on with the saw again like we've been doing. And then you can just cut it, actually you can come here and just cut it right down, and the same thing over here, and cut it down. And then we'll just trim the end off before we put the outside stem on there, which we won't, that'll we do after we turn the boat over. All right, before we get through here, well, we had all those washers in. I'm taking the ones out on that side. Take them out. We don't want the washers on there anymore, and just put that right back in the hole. And then back it up. That's ready, and now I'm just going to cut this off on the end just like we did the sides. Just take this right along here so it's coming right on up on that same angle. There we go, that'll be ready for the outer stem when we get to it. That's it. Let's go back in the package. All right, we're back here now to put the outside keel on. brought that over from my wood pile. This is the one that's got the split in it. Now, what you want to be real sure when you start out, you bring this over too. This is the skeg that goes on the back. And you just got to make sure that this thing is right side up. It's got a bevel cut into it, which this fits into. And you got to get it right side up so that stays in there. Later on, we'll put a screw in this end and then that can't come out. That's the whole principle. So make sure that you get it the right way. So then what I'm going to do is find my center line here. And because this is 3.5 inches, we go 1 3/4 offset each way. So I'll do that. And so on and so forth. Right there. Then what I do is go to the front and find my center line and do basically the same thing. And you can do it if you just kind of find the center. If you find the center right here, center line, and I put a mark there, basically I can just come in here and you can tell pretty much where the 1 3/4 is right here. 1 3/4 is right here. Now what I do then, I check this. If it's a nice straight piece, and this is pretty close, we can use it. But what we want to do is make sure that we've got this thing pretty straight on the bottom and it doesn't get a big curve in it. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to leave this kind of in the middle, and then I'll go down here and show you what we want to do. Shove this forward. Basically just make this flush with the bottom plank in the back. And while we're right here, let's pay a little bit of attention to what we laid out when we did the bottom. We did that forward left and back right, which we're going to, so what we're going to do now is the opposite of that. And what I like to do is make sure I pay attention to what I've got on the boat right here, and then I come back here and I'll put a little mark there, and then it'll be back this way, which is the opposite of what's there, and so on. That just gets me started. And then we make sure we do that same thing all the way down the line. But what I'm going to do here to get this laid out straight and put a couple of lines, bring that, make it flush right on the end, and then I'm just going to clamp it here just loosely, then that'll be real tight. And then I'll go back down there and I'll show you what I do to get a nice straight line down here. Now, you don't want to just shove it back and forth because it'll hang up on the bottom and you'll end up with a little curve in there. But if you pick it up so it pivots on that back just barely, and you kind of eyeball down, and then you eyeball down here to your offset mark, and let it just come down naturally. I didn't quite get it, so I want to go over just a little bit to the side and let it come down. And then I should have my mark on both sides. Just take a look at it, make sure it doesn't have a big bend in it. And then what I do for the moment is get this clamp ready to catch that. Just hold it there. And then let's go back here and start drilling. We need to get our drill straight here. say, I need 2-inch screws this time. We're doing 2-inch screws. And I'm going to come back here where I had it clamped. And I want to come in here about 1.25 inches from the back, so that you get inside and you get into, when you go down, you'll get into the transom as you drill through all this. And I wouldn't drill it all the way down in there. I would just, you could put a little angle to it like the transom or not. It really doesn't matter back here. I'm basically just drilling through the keel piece, and then we'll throw a screw in there and hold it. And then what I'm going to do this time, I'm going to go to the middle and catch a spot there so it can't move on me, and just try to lock this thing in. Now remember, here, we've got the layout here. We're going back here on that side, and we're coming forward on this side. So if I just come along here, I'm going to want to put one right there and one right there. That's the opposite of the ones that were underneath. And I'm just going to put one right there. And then let's put one up in the bow. Well, we've got it clamped. Same thing. I'll just catch one in this one. I want to go there. And I want to do one right there. And then we'll probably add another one or two up in the front later on. And then just to make sure nothing gets out of whack. All right, we've gotten all of this screwed up except just right down here, and I'm just finishing this up. Now, we're going to take this, we're going to fit it in there. We've left this loose over here just to make sure everything will fit. And then what we'll do is just come up. We don't want to push it real tight. It can have a little bit of slack in it, it won't hurt it. And I'll just bring this over and get my drill here. And then I'll do drill that, catch that one. Catch one, that's back to the opposite now, we're back this way on the board under it. So I'm going to catch one right in the middle here. That stay now. And then I'll drill these down like the other ones, put the screws in, and then what I'm going to do is mark this, and I think I'm just going to put a little angle on it back here and cut it off, and then I'll show you when I get through doing that how we fasten this in here. But you want to go to the bow now? right, now we just want to cut this off, same idea that we were doing on the sides. So, all right, we're back. I've cut this off on an angle. If you may want to do a round to it or something like that, it doesn't matter, or even taper this whole thing. But now what we're going to do, I'm just going to show you, just fasten all this down. I'm just going to shove it up in there like we showed, and then I'm going to come back here and I'm going to drill this now on an angle into there. And you've got plenty of meat because you've got the transom below there. Come up there about an inch or so. Go in on an angle. Make sure you're holding that down. And with that screw in there, it won't come out. Now keep in mind, later on, if you want to get that out and it's been in the water and wet, this is swollen up, you take that screw out, you probably won't get this out until it dries out a little bit. Okay, and the other thing, I'm just going to finish cutting, well, we're right here. Let's finish cutting these. And then this one, this is mine. If that gets in too much of a bind, let me show you something here. Which that one does. That ain't taking most anything, but carefully stay below where the salt mark is and just knock that thing off, split it off, get it out of your way. So there, now we're ready to clean up and we'll turn the boat over. So we'll be back once the boat's turned over and we'll be going to the next step. Alright, now we're ready to turn the boat over. What I'm going to suggest is I just back this screw out. I'm going to take this out. It's just to get it out of the way, it won't get broken or whatever. Set it aside. And then what I would strongly suggest is that you get a helper. At least one person, maybe two would be ideal. A couple of nice strong guys. Good looking ones helps too in the video, but that's okay. But we can't all help that. Now, one thing just to pay attention to when you start to turn this, because we're going to bring it up and let it actually put some weight right here after once we've got it up. You want to make sure that you're not out past the leg, because then you can make that whole bench come up in the air. So I just want to make sure that I'm sitting on the load is right directly on the legs or in the inside of them. So anyway, when you prick it up, sometimes you can come over just a little bit as you roll it. All right, you ready, Johnny? We can do what we just did, which is to go that way. All right. Got it? All right, let it come down.
We go over a little bit.
There it is.